Let's get into exactly what I experienced at Milsim West's latest event, Shali Assault. It happened from November 3rd to November 5th at Mutalk, which is an AO that we really haven't seen in quite some time. And in my opinion, we'll talk about this a little bit more later, it's a venue that I really don't think deserved to be returned to. I just don't think that it was a great place to play Airsoft. This event was very much a mixed bag for me, I will say, and we'll get into that a little bit throughout. But let's talk about first, I want to talk about three major things in today's live stream. First off, I want to talk about how I did personally as a player and as a squad leader. I want to talk about our platoon. I was a part of 7th Platoon on NATO as a part of Task Force KEG. And then I also want to talk about the game design, the highlights, and some of the staffing about it, because there's some things that really just kind of shocked me compared to the average Milsim West experience. So like I said, I was a part of 7th Platoon and Task Force KEG, and we do U.S. Army infantry kit. That being said, this is not the greatest kit. I really have started to realize why we only see people looking like special forces at Milsim West, especially on the NATO side, and that's because the kit is just better, cheaper, and easier to get. For reference, we use something called the IOTV, the Improved Outer Tactical Vest, and depending on what generation of it you have, it can be good or it can just be awful. The Gen 1 and the Gen 2 are really bad carriers in my opinion. That's what I used the last time I went as Task Force KEG for Guardian Center 21. That was the Super Bowl of that year. Now I have a Gen 3 I've upgraded, and while it's better, it's still not the best carrier out there in my opinion, and that really, I feel like I would do better with a better plate carrier. And I'm not going to try to blame any, deficiencies that I had on my equipment, but God, the IOTV just sucks compared to a nice plate carrier, like even an older one, like a 6094, an MBAV, or even just a plain old JPC, I feel like would be much better in this scenario. So this was my first Milsim West acting as a squad leader. I feel like most of my experience in leadership at Airsoft games has been from the white cell or admin perspective, so being able to do it as a participant was a really fun experience for me. That being said, I feel like there are definitely some areas that I can improve upon for next time that I definitely want to make sure that I'm working on. I feel like one of the main appeals of Milsim West for me as a player is enjoying it as, or I'm sorry, I totally lost my train of thought. Part of Milsim West for me is the physical challenge of it, because I feel like I've been playing Airsoft for 15 years now. I can go to a game and play and not have any issues. Milsim West, what makes it different to me is the endurance of it. There's no other game where you're bringing out your ruck. At most, you're bringing out a fob bag or something like that. So to have a game that provides that kind of physical and that mental challenge as well, because, for most other games, you go to the hotel and sleep for the night and, you wake up feeling nice and refreshed, maybe a little sore. But in Milsim West, the second night, I think I got 2 hours of sleep between Saturday into Sunday because of our watch rotation and a couple of drops that we had in our platoon, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So Milsim West is really this great challenge for me. And as a squad leader, I felt like I was even more challenged to perform because now I had, 10 guys relying on me. So one of the big things that I noticed about a squad leader is that you do a lot less fighting. Like you're still going to be getting in contact. You're still going to be shooting people in the game of BB tag, but a lot of it is more the planning and making sure that other people are doing what you want them to do. And that was really a eye-opening experience, and I really enjoyed it. I feel like I don't shoot a lot in Airsoft anyways. I'm pretty conservative with my shots, so I feel like this was a good role for that, but I had to change my kit up a little bit. So in Task Force KEG, as part of U.S. Infantry Impression, we try to have 7+1, I believe, for magazines, but I use EPMs. I use EPM 1s as well, which hold 250 BBs. I feel like I didn't need that. So having to change up my kit to fulfill that role of a squad leader, because at Milsim West, team leaders and above are the only ones that can carry radios, that was interesting to change up the kit. It made me think about what I want to carry, what's actually important to have, and that was a really fun kind of challenging part of the pregame experience for me. So having to, make sure that I'm really good on radios, make sure that I am addressing people in the correct way, remembering our frequencies without writing them down on a piece of paper so that the Russians could take it when I die, which happened unfortunately a lot at this game. But it was just a good experience to be a squad leader overall. It's something I want to continue to do. I want to continue to hone my leadership skills, not only as an Airsoft player, but just like in my professional life as well. And I thought that this was a wonderful opportunity to do that. The other main thing that makes Milsim West unique is, again, going back to that endurance aspect of it, is the rucking. And that's something that I really like about Milsim West, is that you have to carry all your stuff in with you, and it makes you think. I feel like I honestly, at this point, enjoy the lead up to Milsim West just as much as the actual game itself, because I like kind of thinking about, what do I need? What can I afford to live without? And this game, which was held at um, Indiana, excuse me, it got very cold at night. Most Milsim West that I go to aren't super duper cold at night. Like, I'm trying to think of a couple examples. Guardian Center 21, it was in December, but it was in the south. So, like, what they consider cold is just normal to me, living in the north. And then even like Balcar this year, back in May, like it got cold Sunday morning, but it wasn't like awful. Like I just had to throw on my fleece cap, throw on, like a jacket, and I felt fine. This game got cold at night, like maybe, lower 40s, I think the one time I checked my phone for the temperature. So having to plan for that and thinking like, okay, this stuff that I need to stay warm is not the most packable. Like a fleece is not a packable item. It doesn't compress very well. So thinking about those things that I had to bring to make myself more prepared for those situations, I thought was a lot of fun to do so. And as more people are joining, hello, if you want to submit any questions, I will answer them. Just leave them down in the chat. But overall, as a single player at Milsim West, my big feedback for myself, I guess you could say, is that I want to continue to work on cardio. I felt like I felt very confident with leadership. I felt confident with being able to place my guys appropriately so that we could be effective. The big thing that held me back was my personal cardio. Because I could ruck, I wasn't falling out of formation, but then like when we really had to move, when we had to run, close the distance because airsoft guns only shoot 200 feet, or we just had to get to a more advantageous position when an entire company was coming at our platoon, that's where I struggled. And, I don't want to blame my equipment, but I think that having better armor would definitely help that. I also want to make my ruck a lot lighter. This was the first Milsim West that I went to that I didn't make any hot drinks. And for me, that has been coffee. I really like coffee in the morning. And this was the first Milsim West that I didn't make coffee. I didn't make tea of any kind. So really, I didn't get much in the way of caffeine. I had 2 5-hour energies during the event, but yeah, this was the first time that I didn't really use my jet boil that much. Which, like, I love that thing. I love being able to make hot food, but I only used it once. I used it Saturday morning to make like a Mountain House breakfast meal, and I honestly could have lived without that. So I think switching away from making hot food and kind of relying on it, like, to me, it's been a morale booster. But I think there's other things that I could carry that would also be a morale booster, such as like, God, I forgot what they're called. They're these little honeycomb, they really resemble like a stroopwafel. Those are great. They are nice and sugary, and those are also a great morale booster for me. So I think that honestly, the next Milsim West that I'm going to go to, I'm just not going to bring a jet boil. I see down in the chat, Eric from Gun Gamers is in there, and he actually gave me a great idea. It's like pita, summer sausage, and Parmesan cheese. None of that has to be refrigerated, at least for the length of a Milsim West. So having that has calories, that acts as more of a meal, because I still want to be able to get away from just eating bars and complete cookies and things that are basically snacks to just keep me going. I want to get away from that being every single thing. That's what I'm going to try at the next event, because if I can shave the jet boil, if I can shave the stove, and I can shave the Mountain House meals in place of things that are smaller and still very calorie dense, that would help shave a lot of the bulk in my ruck. They're not necessarily heavy items, but getting rid of stuff would definitely help. And I see a lot of people down there saying that they don't bring it anymore. Yeah, I think like once you get through a couple of Milsim Wests and you realize that you can hack it, that's when you start to get comfortable getting rid of some of the comfort items that you bring as well. So taking a look at what we have on my personal notes, I'm just looking down on my laptop where else I wrote. That was pretty much everything that I felt on the personal level. So in a minute, we'll get into kind of what I thought at the platoon level, things I'd like to improve there. But again, if you have any questions, any comments, leave them down in the chat. I see Cody saying that he brings bagels with a spread, tortillas with peanut butter and honey, and pocket burgers, which I had my first pocket burger at this event, which if you're unfamiliar with the term, essentially the morning of Milsim West or the afternoon of, you go to McDonald's and get hamburgers. And God, I can't do it. Like I had one Friday night and I was like, this is disgusting. I appreciate everybody who can do it, who has like stomachs made out of iron or steel that can eat that. I mean, it's covered in preservatives. You're not going to die, but God, there's some comforts I still need to afford myself. And I've got a question down below. In 2 weeks, I'll be participating in my first Milsim West. We'll have fun. Um, in the tax op, I see that medics are responsible for CATSEVAC. What exactly is the need for it? I'm going to assume that he's talking about setting up a CCP. So the idea is that your platoon medic is going to set up your casualty collection point somewhere where it's not going to get rolled. So this is where you're going to have your medic water. This is where, so you get shot, you put your TQ on, and then you get hit again, or if you have armor, you get hit 2 more times. Then you can't be mediced by your squad first responder, who just gives you a water bottle, gets you back in the fight. What you're going to do is you're going to go to your CCP, which is going to be established somewhere. It's going to be set up by your platoon leader, your platoon sergeant, which is your cadre, and your company medic, which is a volunteer, like a player volunteers for that role. And essentially, you're going to go there, and your platoon medic is going to give you your IV, which is a drink of water, and you're just going to drink your 16-ounce bottle of water and get back into the fight, give it back to them, because that's how they get resupplied. And that's pretty much all there is to it. It's basically a roaming respawn, if we had to simplify it. So if you are not that role, don't worry about it. You should know where it is. Your squad leader should know where it is. But definitely have fun at your first Milsim West. It'll be fun. And Cody is saying down below that Chick-fil-A pocket burgers is the meta. I could definitely see chicken being better than like a McDonald's McDouble. Like between the super thin beef patty and the onions and the ketchup and the pickles especially is what I did not like about that pocket burger. I could see a chicken sandwich being much better in that role. So the next thing that I want to talk about is kind of my platoon level. And talking about some of the things that I really enjoyed and some of the things that I think that we could definitely improve upon. So our platoon did not get a wonderful job at Milsim West. And I get that there always has to be somebody to do it, but our responsibility was, if you went to the AO, and unfortunately I don't have a map or anything that I can show you real quick, but essentially the map is a city surrounded by some fields out to the west. Our job was to go to the fields, find a crashed aircraft, which is actually super cool, it's like an actual FedEx plane, and recover some intel and some in-game resource, which for us was a flat of water, which was great. And then we had to bring it back. The issue is we decided to drop our rucks, go get the water, come back, and I'm trying to remember exactly how it went. We dropped our rucks at this little mobile home town. I think it was called a FEMA camp if you were at the game. We dropped our rucks there, went and got the water, came back, no issues. Something happened that we had to support another platoon, so we left, and then when we came back, a company of Rust Fort was in that town where our rucks and that flat of water that we left them was. I think that was just a massive mistake that we didn't leave somebody to guard the rucks. Leaving that in a very tactically advantageous area was a huge planning oversight, in my opinion. I think the issue was we just kind of assumed that other platoons, like the way that they planned on doing things, would have created a natural barrier for nobody to be able to get over to those. But because they failed in their missions, there was nobody guarding the town. An entire company of Rust Fort walked in, secured that little area, and we were basically left in a corner of the AO with our initial ammo. That was 5,000 BBs for a squad of 10 dudes with 2 saws and 1 medium machine gun. So that's not a lot of ammo per person. I think I was telling people to load up about 300 rounds of BBs, so two mags each. So that is 3 times 7, 2,100 BBs between all of our riflemen and our squad, and then that leaves 2,900 between 2 saws and a medium machine gun. So I feel like nobody really got the allotment they were supposed to at the beginning of the Milsim West per the tax op. But we do what we can. And what just happened was we were stuck in this corner, and we were able to take the airfield without any consequences. We never got into contact. However, then we got into contact with another platoon because they failed the challenge, where you throw out a word and they're supposed to reply. They failed that. So, we engaged because they got it wrong. That used up some rounds. We had 2 tag launchers break during that engagement because it was just so cold outside, which sucked because tags were running great in so many different areas of that AO once we got past Friday night. So that used up some ammo. And then what happened was we were in this field. So imagine the field is over here and the trailer park we're trying to take us here and then the city. We were in this open field with really nowhere to go. We could either walk through parking, which is basically out of bounds, so we didn't want to do that because that wouldn't be cool, not in the spirit of the game, or we could go up a road where we knew there was more of this platoon. And we just kind of got back in this corner and we're like, all right, well, we don't know how many people are in this trailer park, FEMA camp, whatever you want to call it. We got to move in. The only place that we could do it was an open ground assault onto a trailer park, which, if you can imagine, didn't go very well because we had no cover. And because we had no cover, I feel like we stalled a lot. Like, we'd be like, all right, over the hill, go, go, go. We'd get like 30 feet, and then everybody would stop at like the edge of BB range. And that was just what it was for like an hour. So we just whittled away our ammo, thinking that we'd be able to get resupply or whatever, and that just never happened. We had a really bad logistical challenge. And as Eric's mentioning down below, we could have used the wood line for flanks, but the woods were just riddled with thorns. I've got like a tiger stripe cut across my thigh from all the thorns out there. And a lot of people didn't want to deal with that at 2 a.m. So, we just kind of kept harassing, and then eventually we all got super tight on ammo, and we were told, hey, you're going to get relief. We got 2 platoons that are both going to hit that trailer park, so you guys can get your rucks, you can get your water, and hopefully get some resupply as well. And they failed miserably. We also failed. I'm not putting blame, this whole thing, I'm not putting blame on anybody for anything that happened wrong in this game. But they couldn't break through, we couldn't break through, and eventually that company of Rust 4, which from what I've been told was about 3 platoons worth of people, just got sick of us harassing them, and they just came out and wiped us. So that was a big oof, night 1. So, we had to get our rucks, reinsert somewhere else. So for some reason, we were still trying to do the same thing, so we reinserted through those thorny woods back behind the plane, got some sleep at night 1, and then we stayed there till the morning, where we got rolled again because the Russians came to check it out, saw the other platoon, and then realized that, hey, we were also there. And again, they just had the numbers, they had the ammo, and they just kind of wrecked us twice and within about 12 hours, which was unfortunate. But I will say, despite all of that, everybody who was in that movement on the Russians, it was Prozen's guys, the snake people. They were wonderful to play against. Everybody was kind. I heard a lot of good games and saw some fist bumps after. So I doubt that Prozen's watching this, but he's just a good dude. He's a good cadre. I've never heard anything but nice things about him. And his guys played well. I will just outright say that. So that was a big challenge for us. But I gotta say, we had really bad odds all weekend. But our guys were always pretty motivated about it. That's the one thing that I will say that I thought was really good. Everybody was motivated. Everybody stayed in the game. I think we were a very close to no drop platoon. There was one guy in my squad that dropped, but we were pretty close to a no drop platoon, which I'm happy about. And I think that there are some things that we need to improve upon, but I think given the situation, we did pretty good. I can't be mad about it at all. We were very good on sleep schedules. We were very good on watch. I feel like that's just a classic NATO L, is that they never want to pull watch. We had a constant rotation throughout Saturday and into Sunday. Friday, our watch was a little bit different, but I feel like we still did well. Nobody got shot in their sleeping bag. That's, again, the classic NATO L. Just a wonderful, wonderful time with that, and I was really happy with that. I think one of the big things that we have to work on as a group is our getting ready time. I feel like there was a lot of times where it's oh, hey, there's Russians right there, and a lot of dudes couldn't get ready fast enough. That was one of the big things that I wanted to work on, and I set a standard in my squad before the game of you need to be able to take your ruck from completely unpacked to packed in 3 minutes. Because I recognized that when I did that in my garage to show other people that I could do it, because I got to set the example as a squad leader, I was well rested, whatever it may be. Once it was Sunday at 5 in the morning and I had to pack my ruck, I was going a little slower than three minutes to pack the entire thing. But I feel like a big lesson from this is to make sure that your stuff doesn't become an issue. That like if you're gonna unpack stuff, if you're gonna bed down for the night, don't leave a hobo camp of crap. So like what I tried to do every night before I went to sleep is anything that didn't need to be out of the ruck was put back in it. My bag, what I like about it, even though it's a civilian bag, is that there's an opening on the bottom. So what I can do is I can take the sleep gear out without necessarily having to take anything else out, and I really like that. I get that a lot of military rucks do that as well. I'm just poor. So that was really handy to be able to just take out my sleep system and not have to worry about like unpacking my clothes and my food and everything else to be able to get that out. It also made it very quick. And I see somebody down in the chat. I was surprised you guys stuck around there. Woke up, was just going to look around, and then I saw you guys. Yeah, I don't know what the decision was. I think, like we never got anything from like higher up than platoon level to leave that area. I think they actually wanted us to stay there. So, because I don't know what happened, I don't know the decisions, I don't want to comment. I will say my platoon leadership at the platoon level was amazing. Our platoon leader, Connor, was just wonderful. I've known him for a long time, and this was definitely a role that suited him. Our cadre was also fantastic. He's a personal friend of mine. So, no faults there. And I guess what I want to get across is while I'm saying that there are things to improve upon, I still think that we did a fantastic job. I don't blame anybody for anything that happened. But yeah, I think that we did good, but like everything in life, there's always room for improvement. And that's what makes this fun. I love seeing how scrubby I was at the first Milsim West that I went to, where I quit because of rain, to seeing me today, seeing what I'm able to do at Milsim West. I like seeing that journey of improvement overall. But yeah, that's pretty much the issue that we had at the platoon level. A couple of things to improve upon. Now I kind of want to talk about game design and some of the highlights of the weekend, because this was, again, like I said at the very beginning of the stream, I thought this was kind of a mixed bag of a Milsim West, and I certainly wasn't the only one on both sides of the game that felt that way. And again, if you have any questions at all, drop them down below. I would love to see it. Also, big hello as more people are popping into. And so at the game design level, I feel like one of the biggest issues that we had is because we had a good sized platoon. We had a very large platoon because it was Task Force Keg, Task Force Bottleneck, and also a little bit of a team that wasn't like a impression, but they had like 20 dudes. I feel like the issue that we had is we were just routinely outgunned and outsupplied all weekend. And the reason I say that is I feel like we just always got into situations where it would be our platoon versus a company. And there's just really no way of winning those engagements. I feel like we just kind of ended up in a bad place, honestly, and that just continued to snowball and happen over and over and over again. And I'm just taking a look at my notes because this has been something I've been sitting and thinking about for about 2.5 days now, that I just want to make sure that I say in the way that I want to say it correctly. But yeah, I just feel like we consistently were put into positions where there was no supporting force. And that was always the idea, was like, that first night, like go out, find the airplane, get stuff. If you get into contact that you can't handle, there's 2 other platoons that will come and support you, or there's a QRF platoon that'll come get you. And because they never accomplished their objective, they were still stuck that first night. We just never had those abilities, versus I feel like Rust 4 in general, as somebody who consistently plays on both teams, I try to switch every event if I'm on Rust 4 Militia or NATO. I just feel like they work together better, in all honesty. Like there's never a time where, like every time that I play Rust 4 Militia, you are always directly supported by another platoon. It's always like 2 platoons or a company are moving to do something. That just doesn't really happen on NATO in my experience. And I think the issue is a lot of NATO cadres don't work together, in my opinion. Like, I feel like, and again, I feel like that shows in how the plan goes of like, platoon 1 goes here, platoon 3 goes here, platoon 2 is over here, 4, but it's never that they're in support of each other. It's that they're always kind of doing their own thing. Versus when I play on Rust 4 Militia, it's okay, platoons 1 and 2 are going to go on this movement and go eliminate this, capture this objective, whatever needs to be done. I just feel like in my experience in Milsim West. And again, I am one player. I've only gone to a handful of events. It's not like I've been to every single Milsim West out there, but I just feel like the consistent thing that I notice is that Rust 4 cadre work together better than the NATO cadre do. And I feel like because of that, Rust 4 is just at a distinct advantage because they're always going to have better manpower and they're always just going to have an overwhelming majority of players on an assault. Majority might not have been the right word. Overwhelming number of players on an assault. And that's what you need, realistically. If you want to make sure that you're going to win that platoon level engagement, the secret is to bring more than one platoon to the fight. If you're going at a group of guys with only one platoon, and you know that they are running out of medic water, that they're running out of BBs, then you send an overwhelming force and you're pretty much guaranteed to win. Like, unless they have an amazing defensive position, it's not going to go well. And I think an example of that is when we were at the prison. The prison wasn't the best thing to defend. Like, you think about a prison of being a stronghold, but it's not really. It's surrounded by fence, which you can easily get BBs through. And there are some choke points to get in because there's gates. But at the same time, because the walls are a fence, it kind of works both ways, where they can just shoot through it and get the defensive players. But when we were in the prison, we hadn't gotten resupply for several hours. We were, basically on an island by ourselves, and Rust 4 just kind of chipped away at us by sending some harassing forces for a couple hours. They rested, and then they sent 2 or 3 platoons after us, and we had to move our rucks yet again for the 3rd time of the game. So I just think that that is the biggest issue that I constantly run into, is that I feel like whenever I play on NATO, there isn't that higher level communication. But whenever I go on Rust 4, it always is. So I don't want to say that it's my guys specifically, because I tend to go with the same people to these events. I just think that it's always a continual issue, and I think that's why we're starting to see more and more people go to Rust 4 Militia, because I think the player experience is honestly just better. Unless you're in a specific group that is very good, or like the cadre is like they're big and all the members of this impression are the littles, for lack of a better expression, I just think that you're going to have a better time on Rust 4 most times. The other thing that I want to talk about, which I think is a real big issue, considering that Milsim West is kind of the standard for what a really good game is. And again, if you have any questions, make sure to leave them down below. I feel like there was kind of a nightmare at check-in, which I think has to be addressed, because a lot of Milsim West staff have been there for a very long time. And besides this, again, they are kind of the golden standard of what a good airsoft game is. I feel like the check-in at Milsim West was kind of a nightmare. And the reason why I say that was threefold. So first off, chronograph was, at one point I heard the guy running the chrono say that he had never played airsoft before. I hope you can see why that's an issue, because if you don't know what airsoft is, if you're not intimately familiar with how they work, that's going to be an issue. It also wasn't a cadre. I think that's the big thing. The fact that cadre weren't running certain stations is a huge mistake. And the best example I can think of that was a player was running the blank fire check-in. Admittedly, I don't care how much that player knows about Milsim West. I don't care how much they're familiar with the rules. I don't care if they've been a staff member before. If you have a non-paid staff member running the blank fire check-in, that is embarrassing. Because blank fire, I feel like, is one of the biggest safety concerns you can have at Milsim West. Because, again, we are using real firearms. And if you have somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, that is a huge liability when we're dealing with a real firearm. And the fact that they didn't have a cadre member on that position is completely unacceptable, in my opinion. Beyond that, the other issue that I experienced during check-in is that cadre didn't know the rules of the game. There was, I think, twice where Josh had to correct what his cadre said because they didn't understand the rules. And again, the one that comes to mind is they didn't understand where blank fire members could fire from. If you're going to be a staff member for a game, as somebody who does it regularly, you have to know the rules. You have to be the example, especially when you're trying to say it to a couple hundred people. I just think that that is a really bad look, and honestly, it's just a huge mistake. I feel like the check-in process just was not run smoothly at all. I saw a lot of people who were confused on what to do during check-in. I myself was told to go into a line that I'd already been into before after I showed somebody my paperwork. They told me to go into the line, and then surprise, I waited 20 minutes in the longest line to be told, no, you actually don't need to go there. All the things on my orders sheet weren't checked off by the time we stepped off, and I just think that chrono check-in in general could have been run much better. And the issue is, it has been done better. I've been on NATO at Milsim West where chrono and check-in has run significantly better than this. So I don't know what logistical problems they had, but it was just a mess, in my opinion. A lot of parts of this game were, in my opinion, because it feels like, and Josh even admitted this during the check-in, Utah is not a good facility to play airsoft at. Utah is great if you're a special forces guy who's training to breach into a building, breach into a hospital. It's not a great place for land nav. It's not a great place for platoon movement training. And because it's not built to be designed as a training center for that, surprise, it's not going to work very well for an airsoft game that's trying to replicate that sort of training. So Utah just isn't, as being this big place that people hyped up, wasn't that great of a facility in reality. It felt like there was, I feel like there was two different airsoft games going on. Like they split the field like 50-50 between like Alpha Company and Bravo Company, and then they were supposed to push up. But on our side, which was the less urban side of it, it honestly just felt like we were playing a big pickup game, in all honesty. A big pickup game where we just got rolled over and over and over, but that's besides the point. So yeah, Mutac, honestly, if they held another event there, I'd have zero desire to go because it was a 9 or 10 hour drive for me for an AO that just kind of sucked, and there's better ones closer to my house. So if they do go back to Mutac, which I really don't think they should, considering how much the staff apparently didn't like the field, because Josh outright said that it wasn't good for their format during the safety brief. I just have zero desire to return to Mutac. There are some cool parts of that facility, don't get me wrong, but I feel like you could have the coolest place in the world. You could have great set pieces, for lack of a better word, but if it doesn't play good airsoft or good Milsim West, what's the point in even going? If you're only there to get the pictures for your Instagram, yeah, I get it. But I feel like this game, and even speaking to a lot of friends who were on Rust 4, said the same thing. Like the planning for the game just wasn't there because Mutac's also a very small facility for the amount of players we had. And I feel like a lot of objectives were, don't go towards the cool part of the field. Go out into the cornfield to get a case of water because that's going to take you 4 hours to do, and that'll help us fill out the 40 hours that we have here. I think, honestly, Friday and Saturday were rough, and I'm not saying that because we performed poorly. I'm saying that because the game design just wasn't there. It seems like they never, like the higher up, never really knew what to do with us. They just stuck us somewhere to be a defensive until a company that was significantly larger and better equipped came and rolled us, and then they're like, oh crap, now we need to figure out something else to do. But it just feels like they didn't kind of understand how to use Mutac. And talking to a lot of friends who went on Rust 4, they agreed with the same thing, where they were just, continually bored throughout the game, and then they, once they finally did get into engagements, because Mutac's not a great facility for airsoft, it just wasn't as enjoyable as other urban AOs. And again, I part of this could be blamed on the AO itself. I feel like that's a lot of, it's hard to design airsoft games, especially when the place you're trying to play airsoft isn't great for it in the first place. But honestly, I would say the first 35 hours of this game were a bad Milsim West. The final couple of hours, from 6 to Index on Sunday morning, was the best Milsim West experience I've ever had. And that's really just kind of when it devolves into a big airsoft game, because we were at the embassy, which we'd been guarding all night, which is not a very defendable position in the first place. So I was basically I had people standing in front of a gate, holding the gate, because there was just nowhere else great to put them, and we didn't have the manpower or the ammo to really push out beyond that. Part of that is my fault as a squad leader for not doing that. I just didn't think we had the resource. But yeah, once we got into the part of Milsim West where it just turns into an airsoft game, it was amazing. Fighting on top of and in the hospital, fighting at the the bus station, things like that. That was so enjoyable, and that almost made the entire weekend for me. It's just those couple hours. I just think it's so silly, for lack of a better word, that we had to spend I had to spend 90% of the event hating it to love the last 10%. I just thought that was very, very silly. And again, there's been harder, significantly harder Milsim Wests, like Balkar in the spring. I think it's a great example. My cadre was like, we're going to go on a quick adventure, 20 minutes in and out, turned into a 12-mile march. But we caught an entire platoon of NATO who were pulling no security, mind you. We wiped a platoon, and then we kept going on our adventure. 12 miles at the Ballcar AO was challenging. That was genuinely hard. But God, it was rewarding and it was fun. There was nothing during those first 35 hours that was rewarding to do. And again, I just don't think that they knew what to do with us, in all honesty. And I see people commenting down below that the Rust 4 leadership and battalion command was extremely active in doing things, and I feel like that's part of it. Like I never, like besides the scheduled, like here's the op word, here's things like that, just never heard from NATO command ever whatsoever. And I see other people saying, yeah, Balcar NATO platoons were splitting and not really being paired well. I just think it's an issue because I feel like most new people who go to Milsim West go NATO because they probably already own the kit or they just need to buy a pair of multicam. So you have a lot of, admittedly, a little bit more inexperienced players coming onto NATO. So I feel like it'd be way more advantageous to have them stick with each other because when you have these people who don't really get what Milsim West is yet because they haven't been, or maybe this is their second event, and you're putting them up against, a company or two of Rust 4 that have gone to 10 of these events and they know what they're doing and they're really good at working on the platoon level, which you don't really get at any other airsoft game, well, yeah, they're going to get rolled. So I feel like it would make way more sense for the NATO leadership to keep their platoons together and act as a much larger force. I think it'd be a really interesting experience to see if we made some of the people who were, like the really loved Rust 4 cadre, like, Sean, Nick, McKinley, if we put them on NATO and made some of the NATO cadre be Rust 4 for a game or militia for a game, I'd love to see what would happen. I think it would be the exact opposite, where we'd see NATO do very well, and then maybe we isolate what the problem is and try to fix it for the future. But overall, I just didn't think that this was a particularly great game. It had its moments. Again, the hospital was like the coolest place to fight in. And, I know that airsoft war stories are kind of lame, but I got to tell the story. I remember we were on the roof and we had lost the embassy. So like my platoon leader is like, hey, the embassy has fallen. We got to fall back to our next place. And I was like, well, there are Russians on the first and second floor. We're on the roof. Like we can't go anywhere. And he's like, all right, Godspeed. Like do what you got to do. So we fought down all the floors, got onto the, we finally got to the bottom floor, and we just throw a bunch of frags, go down, kill a bunch of people. And then eventually, I'm walking through the hallway, and I'm, fogged up at this moment. And me and this dude, walk by each other. And at the same time, he notices that I'm wearing UCP and that he's wearing Digiflora, and we just pop each other from, we both just put our barrels up and snub each other. So I've got a pretty good one on my arm from that. But, we're just sitting there in the hallway, and, we're laughing about it. And then I just hear, the ding of the elevator, and a bunch of dudes rush out of this elevator and just kill all the Rust 4 that were walking through. I get medicked back up into the game. That was the highlight of the game. It was super cool. One of them was wearing a camera. It's in the Milsim West General Interest group. If you are on Facebook, definitely check it out, even if you're on Rust 4, because it's just like that Battlefield 4 moment where you come out of the elevator, rush out, and get a bunch of people. So that was super cool. But yeah, that was really the highlight of the game for me. It was such a long drive for me, and I sat through so many of them that I admittedly got my patch and left before the actual game AAR was over. So I hope some of the stuff was addressed at it. Just, I didn't want to waste an hour hearing people say that we need to rope off the pond or people need to stop cheating in airsoft because, I feel like the AAR just gets a lot of airsofterisms, so we just left a little bit early. But yeah, it was interesting. I think, there's no Milsim West coming up that I can make. So I think I'm just going to take a little bit. I really need to try an insurgency. That's the big one that I want to do is I want to go civilian and insurgency. I think it would just be a lot of fun. But then I think the next rep that I do at a urban facility, I want to do Russian kit. I'm actually buying a Warrior Assault System DCS right now, one of the old gen ones. So it's correct for that kit. So I'm going to start working on that, and that'll be some content here on the channel. Mainly because I need more excuses to use my GHK. I bought that specifically for Milsim West and ended up not liking it at Ballcar. So maybe I'll buy an LCT instead and just transfer everything over. But yeah, this made me, I think I got to take a break from NATO, to say the least. Again, it's not against anybody in particular. I feel like I consistently have more fun on the other side. So that's what I want to do, whether it be militia or Rust 4. I'm still going to keep all my keg stuff. There's a lot of videos I want to make on it, talking about the IOTV, the loadout in general. But yeah, that's pretty much the experience that I had at Shali Assault. I am disappointed, to say the least. It was a real mixed bag, and considering how much tickets were, I wish that there was more organization. Because again, I feel like 90% of the game was pretty bad, and the last 10% was amazing. And I just don't get why we can't get more of that 10% to be more of the actual weekend. But if you guys have any questions, make sure to leave them down in the chat. We'll do a couple minutes of Q&A. But my voice is admittedly quite shot from this weekend, from sleeping out in the cold, from yelling. So this is going to be a little bit shorter live stream than usual. But if there's any questions, and I'll just scroll through what we've got there. Yeah, somebody's saying my platoon and especially my squad was stuck in the same 4 buildings east of the embassy from Friday at 11 p.m. to Sunday at 5 a.m. Just wasn't thrilled about that. Yeah, I feel like there was never any opportunities for movement. And while the AO is small, I feel like there was still opportunities to do things for sure. And one of the other things, and again, if you have any questions, leave them down below. I think something that they need to implement at Milsim West is the cadre's ability to put down cringe. I know it's very open-ended, but hear me out. I feel like there's some things that certain players do at these games that just needs a cadre to tell them to knock it off. I think the big example of that is, like you want to have fun with your friends. I get that. But there's a lot of things that people are doing that just kind of ruins it for everybody else. And I'm sure they don't mean to. Like, I don't think they're doing this maliciously. I think sometimes they're just kind of doing it as a joke, or like maybe they, like maybe they are doing it to get a response out of the other team. But there's certain things that just kill the immersion. Some of the guys that were on top of the hospital Saturday night were doing karaoke. And while I loved your impression of Creed, in the real life, because we are trying to, talk about an infantry, experience, if you're making noise and doing karaoke, you're going to get a bomb dropped on you. Like, I feel like there needs to be a way to be like, hey, cadre, can you tell this guy to stop being cringe and to knock it off, whatever it may be? Because it happens at every event. There's always the guy who brings the boombox. There's the people who are just out there like screaming monkey noises and like trying to do all the Milsim West memes for games they never went to, so they don't realize how embarrassing it is that they're still doing it. I just think it needs to be actually enforced. And I feel like on Rust 4 it is a lot, but a lot of times PBs are just way too loud. People are hooting and hollering and honestly just screwing around. And I think that just needs to be put to an end because it ruins other people's immersion. And, sometimes I feel like a lot of complaints at Milsim West get swept under the rug because they say like, oh, that's just airsofterisms. But, if there is a scenario of like, let's use the most classic airsofterism ever, that guy's not calling his hits. The first couple of times it's like, you're just being an airsofter, like get over it. But if you're getting the same complaint about the same group of people all weekend, maybe you look into it. Or, if again, there's just somebody being annoying or being cringe, whatever it may be, like that's got to be able to stop. Because if 5 guys are ruining the experience for, 30 guys, then that just needs to be put down. And also, my squad really wanted to sleep Saturday night because we had moved our rucks 3 times and we were tired. So please let us sleep. So I've got a question from the Octagamer of Battlefield. I'm building a KSK kit for Airsoft. Question, how much money did you spend for your first kit? Just saying, if you're building a KSK kit, you're allergic to money. I'll just put it that way. So you're spending a lot. Let's do my first Milsim West kit, which was just normal. I want to do my first impression because my first Milsim West kit was just stuff I already owned, so I don't know a good price point. But, for my first impression at Milsim West, it was keg. So the IOTV was about $200. The helmet with everything on it was about $200. The gun was graciously given to me by Fox Airsoft for a couple of videos I did for them back in the day, but that was $350 when it came out. The accessories were another $100. So, right there we're at about getting close to $1,000. I feel like the expensive thing for Milsim West for a lot of people, because this was it for me, is buying all the crap you need to buy that you don't need for your standard Airsoft game. Like the ruck. If you want a good ruck, you're gonna spend a lot. My first one was a Mystery Ranch 3-day assault pack. Those are $350 right there. I ended up getting rid of it because I actually didn't like it, and I wasn't like back then. I wasn't great at packing, and that kind of egg shape of it just wasn't vibing with me. So like Eric's saying down in the comments, I do need to buy a Hill People gear bag. That's like one of the big improvements I've been putting off for a long time. It's a better ruck than my civilian one, so I'm looking at something from Hill People gear in the future. But yeah, I would say for my first Milsim West kit, at a minimum for everything I needed for the event, we were probably looking at like $1,250, maybe $1,300. It's an expensive game, and it doesn't have to be. Especially if you're going militia, it makes it really affordable to do it, or if you're just wearing what you normally wear to an airsoft game. I feel like it's, again, just all that crap that you don't need for your standard airsoft game that starts adding up fairly quickly. Like your sleep system can get fairly expensive. If you want your stuff to be able to compact down, that's when it really starts to get expensive, when you want it to be lighter and smaller. So it can add up to a lot. Impressions, like you said, KSK kit, are just especially expensive for stuff that isn't good. The IOTV is a great example of that. Garbage plate carrier, they're expensive. The SPCS, a little bit better, even more expensive. The MSV, which I admittedly don't have any experience with, but Keg now allows it, ungodly expensive most of the time because they're newer. So yeah, I would say realistically, if you're looking to do an impression, especially if you're looking to do a foreign impression or a Rust 4 impression because of certain world events, they're just getting ungodly expensive for most of them. There are still cheap ways to do it, but it's not always the coolest kit. But yeah, we've been going for about 45 minutes. I think we're going to call it here. Again, thank you all so much for hanging out and watching and hearing my thoughts from Milsim West Shali Assault. I wanted to wait a day or two. I was thinking about doing this last night, but I just wanted to get out of the realm of airsoft for a little bit before I did this. If there was any feelings from the games I had, I really wanted to be able to settle them and hang out. A couple quick announcements for people who couldn't join us at the beginning of this video. I'm going to start working on Roast My Kit almost immediately. I close submissions on the 1st of the month, but I'm probably going to keep them open until I actually film, just because people went to Milsim West and took their cool kit pictures there. So somebody literally just asked. It's coming up very soon. Other than that, I've got 1 or 2 other videos that I filmed that I just haven't edited that I'm hoping to work on, and then from there, we'll see where it goes. But November and December should be a pretty expensive month for the channel and also the BB Warrior website. I want to be able to do more articles. It's really cool because those are things that I can just work on wherever. Like if I'm, traveling, I can be writing or things like that. And I do a lot of writing for my day job, so I'm already doing it. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's video. If you want to keep the conversation going, make sure to check out the BB Warrior Discord server. That's also where you can submit your kits for Roast My Loadout. But that is going to do it for today's live stream. Thank you all so much for joining, and I will catch you all in the next video. See you later.